In the previous video, I had described all the headings which we have to cover in a 5-mark question. So there is a 5-mark question which is asking you to write a short note on vital pulpotomy, wherein you will start with the definition of pulpotomy mentioned in the previous video also. Then you will have to write about the classification of vital pulpotomy, which also I had discussed in the last video. Now in this video we will be describing each part of the classification briefly so as to make it a complete answer for this question. First we will be discussing about the devitalization pulpotomy, where first is formocresol pulpotomy. It is a one-sitting pulpotomy performed under the category of devitalization pulpotomy. It was introduced by Buckley in 1904 but was advocated by Sweet in 1930. It is composed of 19% formaldehyde which interacts with the proteins, 35% cresol which potentiates the action of formaldehyde, 1.15% glycerine and 31% water which acts as vehicle. Now it is used at a concentration of 1:5 where pH is 5.1. It is composed of 3 parts of glycerine, 1 part of distilled water, 4 parts of the preparation and 1 part of Buckley's solution. The mechanism of action is it prevents autolysis of the proteins. It is a reversible process and there is no change in the basic overall structure of the protein molecule. Now the procedure to perform formocresol pulpotomy is you have to first anesthetize the tooth and the surrounding tissues, then isolate using a rubber dam, then excavate all the caries. You will have to remove all the pulp chamber along with the roof with a high speed fissure burr. Then remove the coronal tissue with a low speed or a slow speed number 6 or a number 8 round burr. Sharp spoon excavators can remove the pulp, but residual remnants of the tissue will remain. To achieve hemostasis, we will use cotton pellets. If hemorrhage cannot be controlled within 5 minutes, the pulp tissue within the canal is probably very much inflamed and hence we have to continue with the formocresol pulpotomy. Now apply diluted formocresol on a cotton pellet to the pulp for 3 to 5 minutes. Then place ZOA cement without the incorporation of formocresol and give a permanent restoration. Restore the tooth and place a stainless steel crown. Now there is some problem with formocresol, that means it causes toxicity. So it causes local toxicity. It can cause systemic toxicity as it is absorbed into the circulation. It can be mutagenic and it can be carcinogenic as well. Also it may cause damage to the subcutaneous tooth. Next, in devitalization pulpotomy, there is electrosurgery and laser pulpotomy. So electrosurgery is a non-pharmacological hemostatic technique used for amputation of the inflamed coronal pulp prior placing a lining material. The procedure carbonizes and denatures the pulp tissue, producing a layer of coagulative necrosis which acts as a barrier between the living waste material placed and the healthy radicular tissue beneath it. And laser pulpotomy utilizes ND-YAG lasers and CO2 lasers, which are soft tissue lasers. Next in the classification was preservation pulpotomy, where we will be describing briefly about glutaraldehyde and ferric sulfate. Glutaraldehyde was introduced by Koppel in 1979. It is used at a concentration of 2% and is an alternative to formocresol pulpotomy in primary teeth. It is applied for 5 minutes over the pulp to achieve the fixative effects. It has a range of advantages which are superior fixative properties, less antigenic, low toxicity, easy excretion, self-limiting penetration and is cresol free. Now this dialdehyde has limited diffusibility and has a cross-linking ability which is superior to that of formocresol. Hence it can be used as an alternative to formocresol pulpotomy. Next is ferric sulfate, which is used at a concentration of 15.5% for 15 seconds as a hemostatic agent. When it comes in contact with the blood, this ferric ion forms a protein complex and the membrane of this complex will seal the cut vessels mechanically, which will produce hemostasis. Now the mechanism of action is it will contact with the pulp stump. Then it will form a metal protein complex and will act as a barrier to irritating components of the sub base. Last in this classification was regeneration pulpotomy, where we will be describing MTA in short. Although if a question comes in detail about MTA, I will be uploading after some time a video on MTA also, describing everything about MTA, but here we will have to write it very briefly. So MTA, it stands for mineral trioxide aggregate. It was described in a dental literature in 1993 for the repair of lateral root perforation by Torabinajed et al. It is composed of 45 to 75% tricalcium silicate, 7 to 32% dicalcium silicate, 0 to 13% tricalcium aluminate, and 0 to 18% tetracalcium aluminoferrite, and lastly 20 to 30% bismuth oxide. It has advantages of biocompatibility, low solubility, improved mechanical strength, good sealing property, antimicrobial activity, and ability to set in the presence of moisture and blood. It has few disadvantages like difficult material handling, tooth discoloration, and exceptional cost. And the procedure we follow while using MTA is placed to cover the exposed radicular pulp surface up to a depth of 3 to 4 minutes. Gently pack the pulp tissue using the blunt end of the large paper point and a broad-ended amalgam compactor. Place wet cotton to help MTA set. Seal the ZOE. Seal the rest prepared area with ZOE or reinforced or fortified ZOE or GIC. With this, we can end this 5-mark question, and this is more than sufficient to gain a 4 mark in a 5-mark question. So now in this we will there can be more questions individually on MTA, which I will be describing in later videos, or they can individually ask you about formicrystal pulpotomy, wherein there are few more things which I will be describing in the next video, wherein we will be talking about a little bit about the criteria for success. Also, I will be talking about formicrystal pulpotomy, wherein I will be telling you about the histological changes. Also, I will be describing the detailed procedure which we will be writing specifically for formicrystal pulpotomy. So for all this, stay tuned and keep watching our videos with quick tips.